Just a few days ago, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore dropped in theaters. That means I'm going to be ranking all 11 Wizarding World films from the worst to the best, in my opinion. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I talk about a bunch of movies on this channel. If you're new here, down below in the comment section, share your ranking of all 11 Wizarding World films. Kind of an unpopular opinion, I'm not the biggest fan of Harry Potter. I have not read all of the books. All I know about is the movies, and so I've read probably the first half, but for the movies, I'm just ranking them as movies, not based off the books. Also, keep in mind, I'm not really the biggest fan of Harry Potter. At its best, it's probably a B+ for me, and so if you're getting frustrated about where I put things, then keep in mind I'm not really the biggest fan of Harry Potter. Also, a lot of these movies I give a positive review, so if something's lower than you want it to be, then I still like the film. It's just I'm not really the biggest fan of it. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button. Be sure to subscribe. I have more content like this on our own channel. You can check those out when this video is over. With that said, let's begin the ranking. In last place is Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. And I feel like this film highlights all my problems with the Fantastic Beasts movies, in which it can't decide if it's about Newt tracking down his lost Fantastic Beasts, or if it's about Dumbledore versus Grindelwald in this story. I don't think Newt was the right person to be the main character for the Dumbledore versus Grindelwald plotline, and so that just felt very weird to me. On the positive side, I like how they moved the setting back to Europe, back to Hogwarts, stuff like that. I like it that they put the setting back to our original Harry Potter setting, but I still have a lot of problems with this film. That's why it's in last place. And to start off, Johnny Depp is horribly miscast as Grindelwald. You don't believe for 1 second that he is the person that has a deep connection to Jude Law's Dumbledore, and so he wasn't the right person to play Grindelwald for me. Also, while this movie doesn't have a central narrative, each character has their own subplot and backstory that ties into other people's subplots and backstories, and the twist at the end can feel underwhelming and doesn't really make much sense, so this one easily comes in last. Kicking off our top 10 is The Chamber of Secrets. Now, to be clear, every other movie on this list I would give a positive review. I'd say I'd recommend, and I give it a thumbs up. Chamber of Secrets just happens to be this low on the list. To start off, it is a fun adventure with our trio of characters in this film, and because the original set up these characters, and we know these characters, this one could just be a fun adventure with these characters and this mystery that you're interested in. Also, this is a film that gives this great backstory for Voldemort, setting up what is to come for the next little under a decade of years for the franchise. That was a nice little touch. Also, this film adds some great characters, introductions to this franchise with Lucius Malfoy. Kenneth Branagh's in it as Gilderoy Lockhart. He's just very fun and a steam sealer. So is Dobby. And so they add a bunch of fun, nice characters with it. Now, where this one does have a problem with me that put me here is that it's not one of the most watchable ones, mostly because it's 2 hours and 45 minutes long, and they take one of the shortest books and lengthen it up. It was a bit too slow in that regards, and a bit too long, but still a good Potter film. Next up is The HalfBlood Prince. Now, this is a film that it's another one that is frustrating for me because it's not the most watchable of the Potter films. On the positive side, I think that this is a film that does actually set up the finale in a pretty well-rounded way. It's an intriguing mystery about the Half-Blood Prince and why all this stuff is happening in the film. There's this sense of danger and urgency with this story, with our characters, whatever you want to call it. Also, they did some really interesting stuff with the great special effects, especially in the memory sequences. Those can look very cool at times. And that was a little treat to have in these films. And it's one of the darkest Potter films we've gotten, as it's so bleak and dark. But with the film that's bleak and dark, it does go too much into that, often kind of literally, and doesn't have the fun of the other Potter films. And being the next to last story in the franchise, it's kind of odd how little Voldemort is in it. He's only used for this sort of one scene that doesn't even last more than 5 minutes probably. But this is still a Potter film that I thought set up the finale in a pretty good way. Then we have the latest film in the franchise, The Secrets of Dumbledore, a Fantastic Beasts film that I thought was the most focused out of all of them. The franchise was trying to decide, did it want to be about Newt Scamander tracking down his Fantastic Beasts, or did it want to be about the tragedies of Dumbledore and Grindelwald and their conflicts and everything? They easily went with the latter, and I think that I had a fun time with this film. Obviously, it is a film that has a much better casting with Mads Mikkelsen, as you can actually buy that they had a relationship between Mads Mikkelsen's Grindelwald and Jude Law's Dumbledore. You could actually buy that these two had a history with each other, this relationship between each other. Sorry, I stuttered there for a bit. Also, this film plays like a political thriller where they're trying to find stuff out, and that was a term I never thought I'd describe a Wizarding World film as. And there's nice pacing throughout it, being a 2.5-hour movie. It moves at a nice pace, and there's some great wizard action. Now, it doesn't live up to the olden days of the Potter films, but I think it's a fun movie, nothing less. Then we have Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a film that is a very enjoyable film solely because you view the Wizarding World in a whole new way, back way before Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone happened. And you also have these characters that you really enjoy. It introduces these very new characters that you want to see where they're taking things. Newt Scamander in particular is a treat to see on screen, and he just has this quirky naivety of it that gives the film a whole new flair to it. There's this fun story about him catching fantastic beasts and everything, fun sequences. Put it all together, you get a great Potter film. Also, though, it's pretty tonally inconsistent. It goes from torture sequences to fun stories about catching fantastic beasts. Pretty tonally inconsistent during that, but it's still, to me, the best of the Fantastic Beasts movies. At number 6 is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. I feel like this film would have probably been better if it was the first half of a 3-hour epic Deathly Hallows film. Instead, they decided to split the final epic finale into 2, and the result is okay. On the positive side, it has some great moments. It has some gut-wrenching stuff with the death of characters that you've enjoyed, in specific like Dobby. It has some gut-punching moments, but it's 100% setup with no payoff. It's about them finding these Horcruxes and everything, and there's no resolution to it until you get to the finale, which we'll talk about later in this video. But it has very developed characters. It develops the characters because you see how much they care about each other on this journey. But yet again, what holds it back is that it has no resolution. And if they hadn't split the book in 2, I'm sure this film would have been better. Now, there's still some great moments, great action sequences, nice thrills and suspense, new twists and turns to take things, and it all works. There's just absolutely no payoff. Kicking off our top 5 is Goblet of Fire. This is a film that I had a lot of fun with even when I first watched it. It was actually one of my favorite films in the franchise when I first watched it few years ago. Obviously, you have our grown-up trio of characters, and it's just very satisfying to see them grow up and evolve throughout this film, because they were little kids in the first 3 films, and then they grow up. Obviously, the dance is iconic, and a lot of scenes in this film pretty establishes the tone for this film, as well as films later on in the franchise. It is based around a tournament, not Quidditch, a tournament that is exciting and fun to see. Voldemort is in full appearance in this film for the very first time, adding the stakes dramatically high. It adds a sense of danger and urgency into not only this film, but the entire franchise, as you see grown men kill Batman on this very dark scene in the film, and it's just a lot of fun to see. However, there's some weird characterizations going on here. In particular, when these characters are just like grumpy at each other, that stuff didn't really work for me. Hermione scowls for literally the entire movie, except for 5 seconds at the dance. Stuff like that just didn't work for me, but I still think it's a very solid film that sets the tone for the rest of the franchise. At number 4 is the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone, comparing to where you watch this movie. And this was just a great introduction to the wizarding world. And what pulls it together, I'm pretty sure, is J.K. Rowling's sense of not grandeur, but just sense of world building. This movie has some great world building. It establishes each of our characters, and that's what this film does so well with these interesting little characters. It has our hero's journey with Harry Potter, who's abused by these people. But not only him, it's kind of a hero's journey for our trio, as they practically save Hogwarts for the very first time in this film. It has A-list actors, I mean, not now, but they took a big risk taking these 10-year-olds and plopping them out in this film, and it absolutely pays off, as they're now part of the A-list known for these movies. Also, like I said, it has this world that you want to explore, and that also sets the tone for where this franchise goes. And in each of these other films, they all seem to have the magic that this film just started off with back in 2001. The CGI can look pretty dated, and our actors aren't at 100% potential yet, but this is still a great kickoff to the franchise. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban kicks off our top 3, and it's a film that it was a tricky one for me, because it does close off our young years, but the more I thought about it, the better it became. Obviously, on a personal level, I love time travel stories. Terminator and Back to the Future are great time travel stories, and this is a film that is a Harry Potter time travel movie. Although it did mess with my mind a little about how time travel really works, it is very fun. It adds a great new character in Gary Oldman's Sirius Black. There's a nice addition that he's being framed for something. You're not really sure if he's good, if he's bad, but you want to see where it's going next. Also, it is easily the most focused of our young Harry Potter movies, and I mean the first 3. That's what I consider the young ones. And it's easily the most focused of them all, as you have clear motives for our characters and a clear quest and a very interesting story to add into it. Put it together, you get one of the best films in the franchise. Our runner-up is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Whereas the first film, it kind of didn't really work because it was 100% setup. This film benefits by being 100% payoff. It is the great conclusion to 10 years of waiting for this film to happen. And if it was played out like a TV episode, it would be everything that the audience wants from the payoff to 8 episodes of filming. Add to that, it is just so satisfying as you see the ending of here, and it could get a little emotional as well. It has heartbreaking deaths and moments for our characters. The body count is high, and because they established these characters in the previous films, it becomes very emotional when they do die. Also, the Battle of Hogwarts at the end is this massive showdown between everybody who's been established before. It's not afraid to kill a child. It is just all-out war, and everyone's out for blood. Everyone has a chance to stand out. Not only our trio of characters, but even characters like Snape and Neville get to stand out a bit in these little moments where they get to actually be the hero. There are twists, turns, reveals, and they all connect to each other. And they all connect to each other in a meaningful and impactful way. This film is the largest in scale of the Potter films, and the payoff, the showdown between Harry and Voldemort, feels earned in this essence. And so this is a film that, if they hadn't split the book in two, this one probably would have been my number one. I need to elaborate on this more. But in first place is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, actually. This is a film that, like I said, not basing it off the books, but it's a great, great character study of these characters. I've never considered a Harry Potter movie a character study of our trio, but this one is. To start off, it has a great villain in Dolores Umbridge, who isn't the main villain like Voldemort, but is one of these characters that you hate, but you like to hate her, and so she gets what she deserves in the forest, and when the twins terrorize her, it's just so satisfying when you lead into those moments. Add to that, throughout the first four films, they've been dealing with this theme of Harry into leadership, and this is the film where you finally get to see Harry step into leadership, and that was very satisfying to see after the build-up of these years. There's a great finale in the end in the Ministry of Magic, where you have a heroic sacrifice as well as a nice little chase sequence where Harry and Voldemort battle, Dumbledore and Voldemort battle, and there are a bunch of heroic moments in and of itself in here. But it's not just that. It's that this film also has payoff to what you wanted to the first half. Whereas Deathly Hallows Part 2, the whole series, this one is just the first half, and it really does work. It has the most visible threats in the entire franchise. And so to me, personally, while Deathly Hallows Part 2 probably is your favorite, I'm guessing, this is a film that it's just trying to be fun, and it's trying to see Harry Potter go into leadership, so therefore it is my favorite of the Harry Potter films. There you have it. That's my ranking of the Wizarding World. Down below in the comment section, share your ranking of all 11 Wizarding World films. If you enjoy this video, click that like button. Be sure to subscribe. I've got more content like this over on my channel. Up in that corner, there's a playlist for my rankings of 2022. Down there is a video that I'm sure you'll enjoy when this video is finished. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. I will see you in the next one.